extend it, right? So
It doesn't, you don't have to.
we'll figure out how to, you know.
It's hard because
What, buddy? Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but how much? I have one right here. Yeah, but it's like 18,000. And then one place charges
So you gotta have your name. You know, it's okay outside, but you walk in here and you need to, you know. I like parts in here in the evening. It's like this is a nice house.
Hi, Russ. Thank you for doing that.
No, we're not really moving.
that's not
Hi, Jerry. I'm here in service. I got to have my lunch at the same
Nice room. It's a double-edged sword. Carpet gets dirty, but big time. Big time. We went to Kingfish Grill. It's where Black Molly. It's a beautiful place. But it was so loud.
Well, when the last, well, both times. Somebody put it on the table and like right under my hand. And it says Gwen.
Right.
Good morning. What?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Here you go. Good idea. We have a lot of deaf people in this.
Yeah.
Hello, good morning. My name's Mike Napper. I'm Bill's older son, and we really appreciate you being here for the celebration of life for Bill Napper. If you saw the program, I'd just like to point out that my brother Bob is an artist and did all of the little. Oh, yeah, thank you. Anyway, he did all the drawings to depict different parts of my dad's life. So my dad lived here in Coquina for 26 years. He was 89 when he passed, which was on April 19th. We miss him very much, and so we really appreciate you being here. More? Okay. Anyway, we appreciate you being here, and we're going to go ahead with our service. Bob is going to start us off.
Okay, I've never spoken on a microphone before, so I think I can make it work. I'm going to give a little overview of Dad's life. So I'm going to start with a snapshot of his one little memory here. Somewhere back in 1981, Dad and I were riding in the car, probably on the way to a sailboat race. And of course, on the radio tape player, we were listening to Tolstoy's magisterial epilogue of War and Peace, as you do, like father and son do. But that was a random Saturday or Sunday, and if Dad had to be away from an actual book, at least there were books on tape. Excuse me. Dad read so many books in a given year, the sheer volume of it would dwarf what I've managed to read in my entire lifetime. I'm not much of a reader. I'm sure it was disappointment to him, and a great many of those books were great lives and massive histories. But to me, there was one more interesting story that was never actually written down, his own life story. Because from his early days, you might not ever expect where life would take him. Dad had a life's arc that in real time seemed far more certain than it actually was. To understand the full distance he traveled, you have to look at both sides of his origin. On one side, he had a grandfather born back in 1849 in a remote Ohio River pioneer community. On the other side, a grandfather who delivered milk by horse and wagon and spoke German. But Dad was lucky to have two truly great parents who cared for him and gave him an optimism about where life could take him. They gave him a steady foundation, and from there he built his own momentum. During high school, he lifeguarded, he had a dog named Bosco, he played clarinet in high school marching band, he saved up and got a rubber raft, his very first boat, through Boy's life. When it came time for university, he followed in his father's footsteps, attending the exact same college, Hiram College, in Ohio. During his summers off, he worked hard physical labor as an apprentice meat cutter. He even got a few permanent scars from being on the line with some not so promising other apprentices. But look at the sheer contrast of the trajectory. Remarkably, this same guy whose father had been a cop, then a detective, who cut meat in summers, was invited to participate as one of Hiram's bright elite representatives to the prestigious Washington semester his senior year. And that is where he met our mother. No, Mom was also very smart. She was there too. After Hiram, the momentum only accelerated. Dad attended Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania for his MBA. Maybe that's what made him good marriage material. Speculation on my part, but they were married right about then. Wharton was one of the absolute epicenters of American business at the time. When you stand back and look at the whole tapestry, it is a remarkable thing to realize. The pathway from grandfather as a milkman to a summer cutting meat to the halls of Wharton was not a guarantee. He didn't just walk an existing path, there wasn't one, he found his own way. After graduating from Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania, Bill entered American industry during the great post-war expansion of the 20th century. He began in labor relations, sitting across the table from union leadership and negotiating difficult human and business problems. His success led him upward to BorgWarner corporate headquarters, where he designed his own niche as corporate planner. In that role, he represented the conglomerate's interests on an international stage, traveling frequently to open markets regularly in London, Amsterdam, Paris, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, throughout the US, and even Lagos, Nigeria. Eventually, as in any great story, there are challenges. In 1983, as Jack Welch's corporate streamlining craze was taking hold of the country, I don't know if anybody remembers that, Bill's company began shedding full divisions in a starvation diet that eventually reduced the corporation down to essentially a smaller holding company. At this time, Dad had to reinvent himself, and for 18 months he was out in the corporate wilds. He and a close friend, who later became a CD-ROM tycoon, worked tirelessly together at arranging complex loan proposals for manufacturing businesses that were undergoing their own difficult restructurings. It was not a comfortable chapter, but it proved something important. His value wasn't tied to a particular employer. He could adapt. After 18 months in the corporate wilds, Bill returned to large-scale corporate management. This time he stepped back into the arena as corporate planner, pivoting cleanly to the massive growth product of the era, electric connectors at Methode Electronics. He would work there for the next 15 years until his retirement. At Methode, he was charged with the high-stakes responsibility of exploring entirely new markets and finding prime prospects for mergers and acquisitions. So he did M&A. His work would frequently require him to travel and partner directly with on-site managers and bought-out owners, guiding them through the delicate, crucial work of transitional management and corporate turnarounds. Concurrent with that position at Methode, he and our mother partnered in starting a travel agency and the management of it. Many evenings, his commute from work did not end at home. Instead, he'd head directly to the travel agency that he and Mom built together to work on the books, assist Mom in any loose ends left over from her workload. As a perk, they traveled prodigiously, especially enjoying the annual ASTA conventions in Cairo, Edinburgh, Lisbon, Strasbourg, Budapest, and more. As if that weren't enough activity, Bill was on the library board for the city of LaGrange during that span, helping not only to decide the color of carpet, but working on the build-out of the original structure to make it ADA compliant and doubling the size of the library in LaGrange. But by century's end, Bill and Mom were ready for a shift away from the schedules that dominated by business imperatives, and he valued his independence overall, or above all. After that, and after all, Bill had books to read, and boy did he read. We have thousands of them in our house, or in his house still. Along with that bottomless hunger for knowledge, he applied himself to years of dedicated service on the Hack Board right here, as well as to the St. John's County Library Board, and the Story Project, where he recorded many testimonies of World War II vets and their experiences, all while supporting Mom during her tenure as president of Florida's state chapter of the AAUW. When you look at the sheer scale of his resume, you might miss the fact that he valued autonomy above the rewards of business. He loved to study above all. So when his work was done to his satisfaction, So Bill opted for freedom instead of running up the score. He preferred his library, his kayak, and his family to the endless pursuit of business management. He knew exactly how long he needed to play the game, and he chose to step off the field on his own terms. He traded the international flights for a kayak on the winding waterways of Northeast Florida, enjoying a simple breakfast once or twice a week with two close buddies before hitting the water. To the very end, his mind remained as expansive as the world he traveled. Bill followed global business trends to the end through a daily, rigorous study of the Wall Street Journal. He spotted the massive emergence of AI as a major business prospect long before most people did, and he genuinely enjoyed handicapping the prospects of emerging business models. Some of my favorite moments in recent years were when he and I would regularly discuss this or that company, its prospects, its challenges, its future. He loved the analysis and he loved the mental chess of it. The distance he crossed and the probabilities he beat came from the fact that he was a pioneer, carrying on the progress of the pioneers before him. His path was not one he inherited, it was one he made. He showed us that a life well lived is one where you never stop learning, never stop exploring, and never lose your curiosity. We will miss him deeply. Now a song. Dad sang this song when we were kids, especially if there was pie to be had. It's in the lyrics. I suspect he learned this song from people who had learned it from people who had learned it before them, and he simply carried it forward. It seems fitting that it should be here today. It's Billy Boy.
And we invite you to sing along.
Oh, where have you been, Billy boy, Billy boy? Oh, where have you been, charming Billy? I have been to seek a wife, she's the
would like to talk about some memories I have of my dad and a little bit more about his life. My dad was a good and decent man. He was a loving father and a man of many interests and talents. He was smart, well-read, endlessly curious, and always eager to learn something new. If there was a subject that caught his attention, he would dive into it completely. He seemed to know something about almost everything. My earliest memories of my dad are of him reading to us at bedtime. There were certain books we loved, and he would read those to us frequently. He mentioned in one Storyworth memoir that he used to read often was the story about Ping. It's about a little duck on a journey down the Yangtze River in China. My dad would read in a very animated way and do lots of voices, which might seem out of character, but he was really, really good at it. So we really enjoyed it. For a time, Dad liked to build things. Maybe you don't know this, but when Bob was a baby, Dad built a dresser for his room, and we had that for many years. He also built another dresser that I still use today in my garage. It's over 60 years old and will probably outlast me. When we lived in LaGrange, he bought a radial arm saw and set up a workshop in our basement. He designed and built our bunk beds and a big L-shaped desk and dresser and storage system for our bedroom that IKEA would have envied. Those pieces stayed there long after Bob and I had moved out and my parents eventually remodeled. Dad was also our barber through the 1960s, so any hairstyle was acceptable as long as it was a buzz cut. If you wanted something stylish, you had to go to somebody else's dad. He loved being active and spending time outdoors. One of the early memory of my parents was they used to like to play tennis a lot, so they would bring me along and put me in a stroller near the fence, and while they played. Later, I became their ball boy, which mostly meant dodging tennis balls. And, Dad went through a cycling phase. He was influenced by our cousin Dick, who was heavily involved in long-distance cycling. They rode several times from Columbus, Ohio to the Kentucky border and back in the Tozerve, which is the tour of the Scioto River Valley, which is the nation's largest bicycle touring weekend. I never rode that, but my dad and I did do some long trips together. One time we rode from my grandfather's house in Daytona up to Marineland, and we got to see a dolphin show at the end of the journey. What I remember most about that ride was cycling past, and this was in the 70s, miles of vacant lots that were being prepared for Palm Coast. So that would be unrecognizable today. One summer when I was in junior high, Dad and I rode our bicycles from La Crosse, Wisconsin to Baraboo, Wisconsin, about 100 miles over 2 days. We followed the Elroy Sparta Trail, one of the first rails to trails conversions in the country. The highlight was riding through 3 long railroad tunnels, which were cool and refreshing. The low light was, well, riding 100 miles. We ended the trip at Circus World, which felt like a pretty good reward after all that pedaling. My dad also liked boats. As Bob said, when he was a teenager, he saved money and bought a rubber raft from the pages of the Boys Life magazine. When he was about 35, he bought his first sailboat, which was a Chrysler Man O' War, and that was a great boat for us all to learn on. A few years later, he discovered the butterfly fleet at Beck Lake near Glenview, Illinois. He bought a butterfly sailboat and raced it there for many years. Bob and I often served as crew members, and we raced throughout Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and attended several national regattas. Eventually, I got too big to crew, and Dad bought me my own butterfly sailboat, and I raced alongside him. For many years, Sundays from March through November revolved around sailing. Several of my cousins joined us as crew members over the years, and those are memories we'll always treasure. Dad's sailboat interest eventually expanded to larger boats moored in the Chicago harbors on Lake Michigan. While he worked downtown at Port Warner in Chicago, we would sometimes meet after work and head out for an evening sail. Even though it's the Windy City, when the sun sets behind the skyline, the wind dies, so we would often have to paddle back to the harbor. As the sailing got older, as the sailing group got older and family obligations grew, fewer people were sailing. Dad sold the sailboats and bought a kayak. Oh my God, sorry. What started as a new hobby eventually became a passion. After moving to Florida, he kayaked frequently on the St. Johns River and local creeks. He had a regular group of friends he paddled with and often met for breakfast. As Bob mentioned, Dad was a world traveler. During his career with Borg Warner and later with Methode, he traveled extensively through Europe, South America, Africa, India, and Japan, and brought home lots of souvenirs. On a trip to Brazil in the mid-70s, he met race car driver Emerson Fittipaldi's father and brought me an autographed copy of MO that still hangs in my office at work today. His love of travel paired perfectly with my mom's adventurous spirit. Together, they eventually owned a travel agency which gave them opportunities to see even more of the world. They traveled together for 58 years of marriage. Dad was a patron of the arts. He enjoyed classical music, symphonies, opera, theater, modern and classical art, and of course the art of my brother. He usually had tickets for the Chicago Symphony and later the Jacksonville Symphony. He liked to visit museums, go to the theater, and especially loved going to Ravinia, which is the outdoor summer home of the Chicago Symphony. One of the things I admired most about my dad was that he never stopped exploring new interests, and he was a doer. He was always doing something. Family was also at the center of Dad's life. Dad was an only child and was adored by his parents and grandparents. Because he was an only child, he especially loved being part of my mom's large family. He was close to her brothers and sister and loved being an uncle to his many nieces and nephews. Later, he became a devoted grandfather. He loved spending time with our daughters, Olivia and Evie, and took a genuine interest in whatever they were doing. Last year, he and Jerry traveled to Washington, D.C. to visit Olivia and Evie, and I know how much that trip meant to him. When my parents moved from Chicago to Florida in 2000, we made it a point to visit often. Then in 2007, I moved my family to Sebring, Florida, and we were able to spend much more time together. We would often meet for dinner in Orlando, the halfway point between St. Augustine and Sebring, or in Daytona when I was there for conferences or races. When we were young, we did so many things as a family. Even though he didn't ski, he and Mom would take us skiing. He took us to car races at the local dirt track, to Road America in Wisconsin, and once he and I went to the Indy 500 and sat in the Borg Warner seats, which was a real treat. A few years ago, Dad and I went to the World Rowing Regatta in Sarasota, which was also fun. You may know that Dad loved football. In his late 20s, when he lived in Cleveland Heights, he played touch football with some friends. One of the guys on the team was orchestra conductor James Levine. Dad was a Chicago Bears fan for many years when we were living in Illinois, and he and my mom also went to Northwestern University football games. When he moved to St. Augustine, he became a Jaguars fan, which was tough. Well, actually it was similar to the Bears, now that I think about it. And on his 80th birthday, we took him to a game at FIU in Miami where Olivia was going. Every August, he would start getting excited about the new season, and he would pay attention to the preseason games as if they mattered. He just loved it. One thing I'll miss tremendously is our weekly phone calls. We talked nearly every Sunday. Several years ago for Dad's birthday, I gave him a subscription to Storyworth. Dad embraced the project, and over time, those stories became a book. He wrote about some of his early memories, like getting blocks of ice delivered by a horse-drawn wagon. Today, that is a gift we have preserved for our children and grandchildren. I highly recommend his book, but also urge your loved ones to write their memories. I'm so glad we have that. Dad cared deeply about his community. For many years, he was on the library board and school board in LaGrange, and he loved living at Coquina Crossing. For most of the years he lived here, he was active in the HAC and served as an officer, and he also served on the St. John's County Library Board, volunteered with the Council on Aging, and spent nearly 20 years serving as a mediator for the county courts. Dad was too young to serve in World War II or Korea, and too old for Vietnam. He wanted to contribute in some small ways, so he assisted with the Veterans Project. As Bob said, he interviewed veterans from World War II and Korea, and those interviews were recorded and now reside in the Library of Congress. When my mom died, Dad eventually remarried another Coquina Crossing resident, Elizabeth Ritter. Their time together was short. She passed away, but I'm grateful he had companionship and support during that chapter of his life. In the last few years, Dad found happiness with Jerry Linton. They spent as much time together as possible, reading, playing Scrabble, sharing meals, and simply enjoying each other's company. She brought joy into his life, and I'm grateful for that. Jerry had to move closer to family in Greensboro, North Carolina in February. Dad was determined to move there to be with her. And during his last few weeks in the hospital and rehab facilities, he told everyone he was moving. A nurse or his roommate or a food service worker bringing his tray would say, "Oh, I hear your dad is moving to North Carolina." And I'd say, "Gee, Dad, I think you forgot to tell the stranger down the hall." Dad had a love of lasagna. He tried it at every Italian restaurant he would go to, which was a lot. He loved Italian restaurants. And he also liked having a Manhattan before dinner. So after this service, we invite you to have a bite of lasagna in his honor, but you'll have to BYO your own Manhattan. As I was preparing these remarks, I realized that what I'll miss isn't any one thing. It's the Sunday phone calls, it's talking about football, it's talking about the kids. It's knowing that if I had a question, Dad would probably know the answer. For most of my life, there was an elder napper living in Florida, my grandfather and then my dad, and they knew lots of stuff. And I've realized something unsettling. Now that person is me. And I'm not ready for that promotion, but... Dad built a wonderful life. He built things with his hands. He built friendships. He built a family. He built a legacy of curiosity, service, kindness, lifelong learning, and love. He was a wonderful role model. We were fortunate to have him with us for 89 years. Dad, we love you and we miss you. We'll carry your stories with us always. Thank you for being our dad. Thank you for loving us, and thank you for leaving us with a world that feels fuller because you were in it. I'm going to read an email from Bill's granddaughters, my daughters, who could not be here. Olivia, my older daughter, lives in Paris. She just moved there in March, so traveling back was not possible. And our younger daughter, Evie, also couldn't make it, but they did want to let everybody know how they felt. So we're so sad that we can't be there today, but we wanted to share a few fond memories of our wonderful grandpa. One thing we always appreciated about him was how genuinely interested he was in what everyone was doing. He was curious about the world, and he was curious about the people he loved. What was remarkable is that this never changed throughout our lives. When we were kids, he wanted to know what books we were reading, what we were learning in school, and what historical fiction novel we had just checked out from the library. As we got older, that same curiosity stayed with us. He was just as interested when we went to university, studied abroad, went to graduate school, and started our careers in Washington. He always wanted to know what we were working on, what we were learning, and where life was taking us. That extended to our partners, too. Daniel, Olivia's husband, began to anticipate when Grandpa would ask, "How are commodities?" And Marcel would inevitably get asked, "How's the theater?" He knew so much about so many different things, and every conversation seemed to come with thoughtful questions, interesting observations, or a story about something he had recently read. We always loved talking with him because we never knew what insightful question he was going to come up with next. He kept us on our toes, and that's one of the reasons we loved our conversation so much. This one part is from Evie. When I was transitioning after high school, I didn't really know how well anyone would take the news. I knew that my family would always love me no matter what, but I was prepared to need to argue or constantly remind those who had known me one way for so many years. But when we told Grandpa, I don't think he even argued or questioned it. He certainly never gave me a hard time at all. He did his best to adjust what to call me and how to refer me almost immediately. I never dreamed I'd get to hear Olivia and I referred to as our two granddaughters. But Grandpa made it sound natural enough that it was easy to forget I've ever been anything but his granddaughter. He cared about us and was interested in who we really were as people, whatever form that took. And this part is from Olivia. The last time we talked was shortly before I moved to Paris. He was going through a difficult time himself that day after his beloved Jerry had moved. But even then he was beaming with excitement for me. He wanted to hear all about my new life, asking questions about my arrondissement, my new job, and what the experience would be like. Even when he had a lot on his own mind, he was still focused on the people he cared about. That conversation meant a lot to me then, and it means even more to me now. Grandpa was also someone who stayed active and adventurous throughout his life. We admired that about him. He loved kayaking, loved being on the water, and shared that love with us. He took us to sailing camp here in St. Augustine, and some of our favorite memories are of being out on boats with him. He showed us that learning, exploring, and trying new things never had to stop. Some of our favorite memories are of things he took us to do, brought us to the beach, the pool, and the library. He also seemed to have cool technology before everyone else. He was the first person we knew who had Netflix back when it used to arrive by mail. One time when we were coming to visit in the summer, he asked us which DVDs to get, and we said Batman, The Dark Knight. We got all excited and settled in to watch a dramatic superhero action movie, but when we pressed play, we realized he had accidentally gotten us The Black Knight, which is a very different, very silly movie. So we still laugh about that next time. We also loved his culinary pursuits. He made what can only be described as the world's crunchiest salad. Mostly almost unprocessed bell peppers, what felt like exactly one shred of lettuce. He also made great homemade dips and grilled up classic summer meals of hot dogs and plain chicken breasts that we could customize with whatever dressings we wanted. Grandpa loved travel, and he helped make travel a part of our lives too. He and Grandma made it possible for us to visit our uncle and aunt in Los Angeles. And the trip they took us on to Washington, D.C. had a huge impact on us because they both lived there for a while. He took us to museums, historical sites, and all kinds of places that sparked our curiosity and broadened our view of the world. We also feel incredibly grateful for how much of our lives we got to share with Grandpa. He wasn't just occasionally part of our childhoods, he was there for all of it. He celebrated our graduations, watched us grow into adults, welcomed our partners into the family, and got to be a major part of major milestones like our weddings and careers. He was there for the big moments, but also for the smaller ones, like our Sunday evening phone calls and catching up on whatever we were learning, working on, or planning next. For more than 3 decades, he was a constant presence in our lives, and that was a gift. Having a grandparent be part of your life for so long is something we will always treasure. When we think of Grandpa, we think of someone who was curious, thoughtful, adventurous, opinionated, generous, and deeply engaged with the people around him. He made us feel that what we were doing mattered. He paid attention, he asked questions, he listened, he cared. We were so lucky to have him as our grandpa, and we will miss him so much. Okay, now I'd like to have Kathy come up and read a note from Jerry.
First of all,
Is it on? Yes, it's on. Up close.
first of all, I know that he was truly a man for all seasons. I was with him, I had him for dinner just about a week before he was in the hospital, and then we went to Limelight to a play. He had C season tickets for him and Jerry had already left, so we were together just before that. And I saw him in the hospital. He was truly very brave. They say they can't hear me. Okay.
Just hold it up close.
All righty, okay. Jerry's tribute to Bill C. Napper. I would like to take this time to share this mnemonic, M-N-E-M-O-N-I-C, mnemonic poem, celebrating the life of our beloved Bill. Jerry would like everyone to know that she is deeply sorry she cannot be here in person today, but she is with us in spirit and in heart as we honor and remember her. Bill C. Napper. B, beloved by family and friends. I, insatiable reader, who never stopped learning and exploring new ideas. L, loved lasagna, beef curry, and his faithful dog, Mickey. L, lounging in his favorite blue chair while watching the 5 o'clock news, often with a Manhattan in his hand. All of these are repeated. Capable, caring, and once an avid kayaker who was always concerned about and committed to the legacy of Hiram College. A napping expert. How appropriate to have the name Napper and be a napping expert. And master of relaxation. A, astute in politics and well-informed about the world around him. That's certainly true. I loved talking with him about all those different things, and we matched politically, so that really helped. P, patient with others, generous with his time, and always punctual for his cherished 6 p.m. phone calls to all of you. P, politically aware and never short on an opinion, but even more importantly, immensely proud of his sons and grandchildren. E, educating others through his knowledge and wisdom, and an expert mediator who brought thoughtful perspectives to difficult situations. R, reliable, dependable, and deeply missed. Bill lived a life filled with curiosity, loyalty, humor, and love. He leaves behind memories that will continue to inspire all of us who knew him. A life well lived, a man well loved, and a legacy that will remain forever in our hearts.
Thank you. We're going to have just a short musical interlude. My dad's favorite symphony was Tchaikovsky's Fifth, and so we asked Venus to play for a moment or two. So this time, I'd like to invite several people that were expressing interest in saying a few words. First would be Dan Allen, President of the HAC. Then Ken will be right after that.
Hello.
Again.
Bill was a soft-spoken fella, a man of few words. But like E.F. Hutton, when Bill spoke, people listened. Bill was a charter member of HAC, dating back to 2002 when HAC was first formed here in the community. He served some 20 years on the board, longer than any other person that ever was before him or after him. I don't think anybody will ever serve that long. Bill is to blame for me being president the last several years. I say he's to blame because he's the one that nominated me. So if you're going to find fault, fault lies with Bill. Okay. The most impressive part to me, or thing to me, memory of Bill was just this past year. When my secretary resigned, we were kind of in a jam because of an important position. And without even asking, Bill, at 89 years old, stepped up to the plate and said, I'll do it for the rest of the year. And that was such a burden off my shoulders because it was just amazing if you think about it. I was thinking about it this morning. I told my wife, I said, that's the most impressive thing I remember about him. Is that at that stage, after serving all these years and serving in every position, he was president for many years. He was vice president when I first came on the board 15 years ago. I was the secretary. So I know how much work is involved with typing up the minutes and getting them posted every month and so forth. So I really appreciated that. Bill was a resident expert on Florida State Law Statute 723. For those of you who aren't aware, that is the state law that governs mobile and manufactured home parks in the state of Florida. There's a lot to it. And Bill was well versed. Whenever we had a question to do with the law, he usually had the answer. And if he didn't have the answer, he knew where to find it, and he could get back to us right away with the answer. Nearly 10 years he devoted and spent and served in some position of the board called the Network for Progress. Many of you aren't even aware of what it is. But for years, there was board members from around the state of HOAs and ELS properties. And these board members would get together on a quarterly basis with ELS upper management and discuss issues and try to, resolve conflicts and that sort of thing. And he did that for about 10 years. And that was a very selfish thing to do because they traveled at their own expense all over the state to these meetings and stayed usually at least one night in a hotel. And I don't even think he got reimbursed. He may have got reimbursed for that, but I'm not sure he did. Bill did love this community, and he worked tirelessly to help improve the lives of all the residents. And for that, I think we all owe him a debt of gratitude. Thank you for listening.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Ken Wilcox, and Bill was my friend, a member, board member, and someone so valuable for our community. As I said, he served on our board, and whenever we had a tricky situation, Bill was the person we sent into. He also helped us with our Venus Manley Scholarship Program. Each year we give out 5 scholarships to kids with disabilities that want to go on for further education. We call them Kids with Special Courage. And Bill worked on that committee. He would interview students, he would go over their applications, and he would be the one that would help us to decide who was needed our help. So he is an amazing guy. And so today we gather with both sadness and gratitude. Sadness because we're going to miss him. We're going to miss his smile, his presence, his kindness, steady way he moved through life. Gratitude because he came into our lives. We had an opportunity to know him and to love him and be loved by him. And also to witness his example of life, of how to move through this challenge of life and to do it with grace and joy and love and curiosity. When you think about successful people, most people think of careers and accomplishments and achievements. And he certainly had those success. He worked hard, he built a good life, he earned the respect of those around him. But he also had a life of love. Because when we're honest, the true measure of a person is not in the resume. It's found in the hearts that people leave behind. It's like in The Wizard of Oz, what the wizard tells the Tin Man. He tells him, a heart is not judged by how much it's loved, but how much it's loved by others. And really what that means, it's not just about having the emotion of love. That's the easy part. It's about getting out into the world and demonstrating that love, being active, making life just a little bit better for people around you. And that's what Bill did. And by that measure, he was enormously wealthy. He was a loving father, a devoted grandfather. He was a person whose great accomplishments was not in things, but by people who loved him. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "To know even one life is breathed easier because you have lived. This is to be successful." And Bill was successful. His children breathed easier because he was their dad. His grandchildren breathed easier because he was their grandfather. His family breathes easier because he was Bill. The poet Henry Van Dyke wrote, "Some people are so much sunshine to the square inch," and that was Bill. Not loud, not demanding, just steady sunshine. The kind of person whose presence makes a room feel warmer, and when they leave, it's a bit quieter. And so now we face the mystery that every generation has to face. We stand at the edge of loss and wonder where our loved one has gone. But this I know, love does not die. It changes form, but it continues on. The truth of the matter is, Bill now feels more alive than he ever did in this physical realm. Because now he lives in the loving arms of God. Now he's back home with his parents, his wife, Elizabeth. And it doesn't mean he's gone from us. He's still as close by as our memories. Bill's laughter will live in the stories his families and kids will tell about him. His values live in his children. His spirit lives in his grandchildren who carry pieces of him on into their future. And so it comes to us, how do we deal with our grief? How do we manage to, when we lose someone? I think some of the most wise words I ever heard were actually from Queen Elizabeth. And one time she said, "Grief is the price of love." And that's our challenge today. is to carry on, but also to remember that in that grief, it's for us to step up, to be as loving, kind, and compassionate and supportive as Bill was to us. So let us not just mourn Bill, let's celebrate him. Let's celebrate what a good person he was, a kind man, a loving dad, a great grandfather, a wonderful friend. And let us give thanks that for a little while our paths crossed. And what a huge blessing that is. Just in a moment of time to have someone in your life that you genuinely know is a good and decent and kind person. Someone who thinks well of you and supports the best of you. This is a great gift from Spirit, and we were all gifted to have Bill in our life. So may we carry his memory forward. May we remember his kindness. May we honor him by loving one another. And may his journey continue, surrounded by peace, love, and light, as he sleeps easily in the loving arms of God. And may we all know that one day we will see him again. I'm going to end with a poem, and this poem is anonymous. We don't know who wrote it. It says, I am always with you. When I'm gone, release me. Let me go. I have so many things to see and do. You mustn't tie yourself to me with too many tears, but be thankful we had so many good years. I gave you my love, and you can only guess how much you've given me in happiness. I thank you for the love that we have shown, but now it's time I travel on. So grieve for me a while if grieve you must, then let your grief be comforted by trust. But it's only for a little while that we must part. So treasure the memories within your heart. I won't be far away, for life goes on. And if you need me, call me. I will come. Though you can't see or touch me, I will be near. And if you listen with your heart, you'll hear all my love around you soft and clear. And then when you come this way alone, I'll greet you with a smile and a welcome home. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ken.
When you walk
just a couple more comments.
Not a couple, just one.
Just one? Okay.
Okay, hi. Most of you know that I'm a talker, right? For 8 years, I sat next to Bill Napper in the board. I don't know how it happened that he always ended up sitting next to me on my right. It wasn't planned, it was just happened. When we first started the meetings, I would feel this slight nudge on my leg, and I would lean further away thinking, what's going on? After a while, after he nudged me enough where I wouldn't stop talking, he would push harder, and I would turn and look at him, and he would just give me like an eyebrow. Okay. It took me almost a whole 8 years that I was with him, because it got to the point where he stopped nudging my leg, and he literally took my arm to stop me from talking.
Well, I think we'll all stop talking now. And we invite you to have one of my dad's favorites, which is a little lasagna in the back, coffee. Thank you all so much for coming, and God bless Dad.
It's not just us, it's the world.
You go to a surgeon and says,
I didn't think people knew that. Some of it I didn't really know. I had to find out.
falling down.
Yeah.
Sockets. So he says, well, if this therapy, I think